It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza.
Hey, Irwin.
Now, you know I've always been fascinated by architecture, right? And I guess, when I was young and actually was looking, wow, architecture, so cool. The combination of, art and math and science. That's when I knew it wasn't, and that's when I knew it wasn't going to be the career for me. But it is something I love and really do appreciate. And to state the very obvious in terms of architecture is a sense of place on Eastern Long Island. I mean, my gosh, we have had some of the premier architects that this world has ever known working out here from the 19th century on. I mean, the Seven Sisters and McKim, and White and Grosvenor Atterbury and Amar Embry and, right to present day, Robert A.M. Stern, Andrew Geller. But I guess that's why I'm so excited that we have two wonderful architects in our own backyard. So without further ado, why don't we bring in Nilay Oza and Peter Sabbeth of Oza Sabbeth Architects in Bridgehampton. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
We're excited to have you. We really are. And, I guess the biggest place to start, and almost an obvious place to start, especially as it relates to the mission of Our Hamptons and the general sense of place of Eastern Long Island, is sustainability. Now, I know sustainability, and we should also mention I'm going to mention this, or we have to congratulate both Nilay and Peter. They had a fantastic article, recently in the New York Times about a project they worked on right on Little Lane in Springs. Really a big piece in the New York Times. And it's a place I would bike ride down that street all the time, Esperanza, before I even realized I made this connection. So it was very cool. And it really is a beautiful property. And you really, guys, I'm sure, are very proud of it. But sustainability, and I'll pose this question really to both of you. It's a difficult thing, but it's so germane to what you both do. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, Peter, you want to go first? Sure. I mean, sustainability is an interesting word, because I think more often than not, people quickly go to thinking about green building, right, and thinking about a home that will, sit lightly on the environment. When you take a step back from the word and take a step back from the art of architecture, and really the most sustainable house is going to be the house that stands up the longest. These houses that were built hundreds of years ago that have never been knocked down, that's sustainable. The homes that we've been building for the last 50 years that get torn down because of fashion 10 years after they're built, I don't care how green the house was, is the least sustainable of homes. And so it removes almost the science of sustainability and brings it more back to the art and what is being created and what is being built. And can you build something that 5 generations later are still going to find appealing and attractive and wanting to live in?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Nilay?
Yeah, so I mean, building on that, we tend to do a fair bit of what we call radical reimaginations. They're projects that are by definition renovations, but they so reimagine what was there that it to the inhabitant feels like a new experience, a new home. And that we feel is a sustainable way to design, because it provides newness, it provides change, it provides the benefits of technology to a structure that has been around for a while. And there are limits to that, but we think of that as a big part of our practice. And importantly, because we also build few of our homes, it is the vehicle through which we get to see buildings change over time and what works and what doesn't, and therefore what we need to do to radically reimagine something. So that, in some sense, again, staying away from the whole green conversation,
right,
is a sustainable aspect of the work that we do.
So
yeah, that's great.
When you say, just to clarify, when you say you build these houses, in other words, sometimes you are actually both the architect and the builder. In other words, you're the developer, so to speak, and the architect on certain projects you're doing.
That is correct.
I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see.
Yeah, not all projects. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship between us, the property, and the client. And we come to it with a very kind of organic process. For instance, we will not bid against our general contractor friends. It's just unfair.
Right.
So that is one of the things that needs to. So Lilla Lane was built like that. It was a self-performed construction project.
I see. Now, for me, to put this out there, sustainability, I guess you could loosely define it as trying to limit humanity's impact on the environment or something of those kind of terms. Look, there's an 800-pound gorilla in the room when we see what's happening in East Hampton with development. Development is not a dirty word, and we're not trying to imply that it is, but by the same token, not only are you guys artists, because what you do is really, for me, an art form for sure, but you're still trying to pay bills, support families, and everything else. You're trying to make a living. So this is something Esperanza and I often talk about. I mean, how difficult is it when you're working with a client or what have you to really create that balance where, in terms of just the size of that the client wants of a house versus its relationship to the land and whatnot. I mean, how do you?
I was actually, Irwin, that's interesting. You use that word balance because, as you were saying, sustainability, and you both, Nilay and Peter, expanded on the idea of sustainability. My thought went to balance and having a balanced approach. And so in this case, you're also talking about the balance of the career in and of itself. But I just wondered, actually, to add to that question of Irwin's, is really how do clients actually do they come to you to find that they're searching for that reimagination, right? That recreation. So I'm interested in that individual who has that mindset, who possesses that mindset, and seems to already have that balanced idea of what they want to do here in the area.
I think.
Go ahead, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think when the majority of our clients are approaching a construction project within a financial framework. And what I mean by that is, I think people, maybe more so than in other places in the country and the world, buy their Hamptons house as an investment and as part of their portfolio. And because they're doing such, a lot of them, the vast majority of people out here are New York City, weekenders and transplants. And money is of primary importance. And not only are they buying a summer home or a weekend home, they're buying an investment. And coming along with that, they want the greatest return they can possibly get on their investment. And, history and the market has taught us that the way to maximize your investment on any given piece of land is to build the largest house you can possibly build on it as the local codes will allow. Right. And, more often than not, our clients are coming to us, and the first thing we'll do is a site analysis where we'll break the lot down and say, what is going to be allowed here? And more often than not, again, will the clients resort to building the biggest house. and wanting to get as close as they can to the biggest house, just simply to maximize their exit when they do sell the house.
I'm going to pose this question to both of you on that point, because and I understand, and really, and again, I understand. At the end of the day, look, I was in business too. At the end of the day, you're answering to a client, but on a professional level, on an artistic level, on an architectural level, is there part of you, like when you're engaging in these dialogues or initial conversations about a property, that you're saying to yourself or thinking to yourself or to each other, can't they just build 3,000 square feet on this house, on this property? Why are they going 9,000 square feet? Like, you know.
Yeah. And
yeah, so Irwin, it's not, so I don't necessarily put numbers to that, but our response inevitably to that condition that Peter has laid out is to say, you can have more square footage that is less architecture. So it's just more space, but it is less of a home, less of a piece that of beautiful architecture that you will enjoy. So you can make something smaller, but actually have more to enjoy. Your experience of it is more. So as architects, to answer your question, Irwin, we will simply say that. And many times spaces that are multi-used are actually more compelling because you tend to see them in many different ways. The formal dining room that actually never gets used and is cobweb ridden is never an enjoyable Thanksgiving space. The space that actually works is one that is the one you use over time.
It's the
there is
workhorse,
some familiarity with it.
Yeah.
So in design terms, but there is the client, we jokingly say sometimes it's, that famous dictum, form follows function.
Right.
There is the form follows spreadsheet type of client as well, where you just have to tick off all of the things. And we have to deal with, all types of clients, and their wants are legitimate. And so we just have to design the best possible version of the home that they came to the table looking for. And that version could be smaller but better, for sure.
It's valuing quality over quantity, right?
Quantity, correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I was just going to add that I think a lot of the expectations of the clients and of the Hamptons homeowners has been driven. Now, we've also done some spec development work, but I think the houses that certain spec developers have built have created a language for what the expectation is of a Hamptons home. And so I've noticed that a lot of people come to us and they're getting a custom, beautiful design home that is not a spec home in any sense of the word. It's not it's a site-specific, client-driven home, but we are asked to put in the amenities that many of the spec homes sort of created a language around. Do they use them? I don't know. But it's just
Esperanza loves amenities.
We call them amenities.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing, and I think there's that, because the buyer is expecting and looking for his wine cellar and looking for his gym bath and looking for his, all these things that
are good for resale.
They're good for resale, so we're asked and we put them in most houses.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a term on Our Hamptons that we use so often, and I know you guys listen to the show, and so. Yeah. How it's, and again, it's there's a certain frustration factor I know I have about this, and it's how it's often, and it's a point you made really so eloquently, Peter, that at the end of the day, it's thought of as a commodity, less so as part of a community or a home, and I guess, from the outside looking in, I say to myself, that's unfortunate, and maybe part of the work you do, because again, there's such an artistic component to it. There may be a source of frustration, for you, for architects, and not for you personally, architects in general, professionally speaking. But again, at the end of the day, there is an answering to the client, and you're just trying to make a living. But Wow.
And you're answering to the client, but you also have to work within the restrictions of a zoning code and just, yeah. And so I would ask that question as to how that shapes not only the dialogue with your client, but also the way you approach a property, how those restrictions or even encumbrances that a property might have will dictate or form the function of the house and the design of the house.
It'll dictate the form and function of the house and the design of the house, and it'll also dictate for the buyer. Let's just say that the client is coming to us and has just bought the property. Typically, he'll have one of these site analysis is done. So is it site analyses or is that analysis?
One analysis,
site analyses,
several analyses.
analyses done before they actually purchase the property because they want to see what the potential is.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
And
they're planning. And how accurate is that usually also? Because really sometimes there might be wetlands that aren't flagged, or things that might come up as surprises.
Exactly. I mean, to answer as a design problem, zoning ordinances and rules and laws are actually not, quote unquote, a problem. I mean, design is made.
We like to hear that
in complex contexts, right?
Yeah.
So you make a design that's tailored to many things, and that's what makes it custom. And it's also tailored to the local jurisdiction's code. But there is this unknown gray area that all the local jurisdictions have, which makes it unstable, and it just adds time. And perhaps that's a feature, not a bug. They want to slow down development, so the code is purposefully vague. But as a thing, zoning restrictions are not bad for design. They're good for design. They make better design.
Don't they make you think creatively?
Correct, exactly. So it's just how well they are disseminated. And we might talk about this later on, I don't know, but we have such small jurisdictions with their own sort of code, sort of barnacles. And it is hard to go from one to the other because there's so many different, places to go wrong. But the super kind of wealthy can throw 4 lawyers at it and they get what they want.
Of course.
And that is a problem because the bulk of the marketplace, people like us that want to actually do the right thing, are always in a tussle, with the client at one end and the jurisdiction at the other to kind of create something that, is, viable and suitable for the client.
And sustainable.
Yes.
And sustainable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Nilay, speaking of code, because this is something we spoke about, we touched on this briefly before we actually started recording when we spoke once, and you made a great point about this, and I wrote it down. I thought it was so accurate how the codes, this is whatever we want to call this, the supersizing of houses, the maxing out of properties, the issues, the challenges of this region. You called this a regional issue, yet to your point, codes differ within all of the different barnacles of different jurisdictions. Sag Harbor Village versus Amagansett. One is governed by a town, one is partially within an incorporated village, obviously very different in terms of the whole aesthetic, the whole physical vibe and everything else.
Yeah.
And so those are challenges. While it's regional, each of these places has so much of, for lack of a better term, Esperanza, I'm going to use the word personality.
No, it's true though.
Right?
They are personalities and aesthetic personalities even.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And there is a downside to that. And the upside is that they're distinct, and they are voting jurisdictions. So, Sag Harbor adopts a particular kind of feature in its code because the underlying voting public wants it.
Right.
Totally get that. But across the board, what it does is atomizes the skill set at the end of the reviewer. So you have small jurisdictions dealing with a lot coming at them, a lot coming at them.
Yes.
I mean, and they do the best they can. But again, talking about a phalanx of lawyers in a small planning board hearing, they're not tooled for that kind of onslaught. And so is there another way to kind of pool our resources so that we can, be better at development, basically, just better at development, and not letting just the big ones go through because they have the firepower, right?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, and this is something Esperanza and I have spoken this on Our Hamptons previously. Look, let's be completely honest. These village boards, town boards, they're overmatched. They're overmatched in terms of dollars, in terms of, to use your word, Nilay, the firepower, in terms of legal representation. I mean, they're bringing the best of the best against a small little incorporated village or a town. They're overmatched. So, but that's really an interesting point. So, look, here's another term Esperanza and I use all the time. Part of this is a mindset. And, in terms of, it's a mindset that's also, it's not new. We had a Gilded Age in New York City. We had Gold Coast estates on the North Shore of Long Island that were, I'll use the generic term, grand beyond belief. So these are not old issues, but I think the difference is when it's out here, we feel just that there's a sense of the Esperanza, I'm going to put this to you. We feel like the land is disappearing, like the open space is starting to disappear, and
which is the character of the place, right? Also, I mean, it's a big part of the character
and the history of the place, and the sense. Listen to this one, Esperanza. The sense of place of the place, and it's also part and parcel. And I guess when I was living up island in Great Neck and I saw these things happening in Brookville and Glen Cove and Oyster, okay, well, it was up island. These are suburbs. This place has a different dynamic and for me, just a much richer history. And I think, though I'm not a Bonnaker, I've been here for 33 years and it hurts me a little more. For lack of
Irwin, that's like the perfect sort of, here you did a segue for me.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. We segue a lot on Nilay and Peter. You know that by now.
Because I was saying to Irwin that I had read this wonderful book that Helen Harrison and Constance Ayers-Den wrote. I mean, it's now like 20 plus years ago, Hamptons Bohemia. And I was just rereading it the other day, and I got to this part where Harold Rosenberg, who was, as you know, one of the abstract expressionist movement's key theorists, and he had been a Springs resident since 1944. And he said something that it just struck a, sort of a chord with me. And I was thinking about you both, because he said that, there came a point where all the artists had come out here, all the artists, writers, and everything, and they had established a character to the area, right? As we're talking about, they had made this a sort of a unique place. And then what happens with that, and it's sort of the gentrification issue, is that it became that the Hamptons was indistinguishable. And this was back in, we're talking like the 50s and 60s here, indistinguishable from New York City, right? There was no unique vibe anymore. But I love this quote from him, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this, because he says, but the most ominous influx in the last few years has been the architects. I've always maintained that they were tomb builders. And so I wondered, in light of even what we're talking about, and I don't think that I would never consider you both to be tomb builders, but I get a sense that these monuments to self that are being constructed everywhere are rather tombs. They're like pyramids, right? So I just wondered what your thoughts might be on that, because it was a really,
Well, actually, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say that I think, well, because when you say tombs, a tomb stands forever. right?
Yes.
And it's meant to house somebody forever, which would mean it's a sustainable work of art. It's a sustainable creation. When in reality, our tombs, these mausoleums that maybe are being built out here, are being demolished in 10 years.
They're fungible. Exactly where I was going with
wow.
that. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
So see, I love how you could interpret this, right?
It's totally that, because it is a fun, it's like Peter was saying, it's a commodity. And yes, it's a commodity, so it needs to meet the market, so it's doing the big things. But I wish it were something that Rosenberg was talking about back there, because then it means they're taking care in building what they have, and they want the experience for eternity to be great. And so it will be a great piece of architecture. And so I wish for that, honestly.
That's terrific. And then and Peter, props to you, because you really started this dialogue today with discussing how some of these older homes are the ones that have really proven over time.
I mean, yeah, Kilcare is like the perfect example of that, right? I mean, that's
I mean, Kilcare is the blue Oxford shirt or the black cocktail dress, right, Esperanza? I mean, it's always going to be fashionable. And you know, so that's a
you look at the little old cottages in Sag Harbor, the whalers' cottage, you know, those cottages. They're still standing, they're still looking, you know, they were built with horsehair insulation in the walls, and that's sustainable. That's sustainability, because they're cherished and revered now. And you know, we look back at them with nostalgia. That's sustainability.
Yeah, you know, this wasn't, you know, this wasn't in one of my little things that I wanted to bring up, but I'm just going to and put this out there. Like, when you see things like, and we've all read these things, when you see a Norman Jaffe where it's advertised, you know, you can start from scratch and just remove this property, or, you know, a Gordon Bunshaft. Does it hurt you inside when you see that? And like, or is it really more just, well, time goes on? And to use a line we quoted earlier in one of our very early episodes, Paul Goldberger said this, you know, this is East Hampton's not a museum frozen in time. I mean, do we treat these properties with enough respect, or are they, is it just, well, it's a commodity.
They seem expendable.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, something needs to happen, because we also cannot lose our heritage. It reminds me of a friend and kind of traveler, Timothy Godboard. He started this outfit called 20th Century Modern. A bunch of us at AIA Peconic kind of put our shoulders to the wheel, and there are 50 properties that have now gone to Paul Goldberger to kind of give it a once-over that will essentially become get on the list of national historic in the National Historic Registry. So we need to do something that is, you know, affirmative, that gives us agency against this onslaught that is going to keep coming. And we have to keep maintaining that.
And I commend that. And yet, you know, we all know that the listing on the National Register of Historic Places does not prevent demolition.
Does not prevent it. No. It just gives us a temperature to say who is going to come back and say, no way, no how. And who is going to be a friend that says, I like this, tell me what I can do. It's literally, that is the first step to understand what is, you know, how do we get behind this? And that was the purpose of that effort.
20th Century, they have a wonderful, we follow them on Instagram, and they always are putting out those kind of sites, you know, issues, and really, they really are striking. But, you know, Esperanza, Nilay did his own segue here, so I'm going to go with that. You know, talking about AIA Peconic, and I know that's an organization that's very important to both you and Peter. Tell us now. Are they part? They're also part of this effort, you know, along with 20th Century Modern and whomever else, putting this kind of positive information out there about the importance of these kind of properties. Am I correct?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. It's an organization that I served on the board for the last 2 years. We've had a transition in leadership there and have an amazing new executive director, Maria Fumai-Dietrich. Frank Guittard, I know, Esperanza, you served with him.
Yes.
And then Debbie Croft, and a bunch of us got together and made an effort to sort of revitalize this organization. And I got to say, for all the things that these small organizations are kind of, they're slow, they're kind of, behind the times, I feel really great about them. And I got to say, over the last 10 years, they've put 30 kids into college with architecture scholarships. It's given out $100,000, and I think it's great because it is homegrown talent that we get to benefit from when they come back. We in fact have one of our employees who actually is a scholarship recipient, and I find that great. So I would just like to commend them and their efforts over time to kind of keep hold of good talent out here.
It sounds like the organization is really working, for lack of a better term, for the greater good. Both in terms of working to support the future architects that are going to be working out here, but just also, again, something that's really near and dear to the hearts of our Hamptons. Just what this place is all about and what it means, the sense of place, and I think that's terrific work. We're going to start wrapping this up. So I just really would like to say, first of all, an enormous thank you to both Nilay, Oza, and Peter Sabbeth of Oza Sabbeth. You could find them on Instagram, their website, same name, ozasabbeth.com. They're located on Montauk Highway in Bridgehampton. We really appreciate a dialogue like this. When I remember doing a project on in my house when I lived up island, and my architect at the time said it's always good when the architect has an adversarial relationship with a builder, and I always said something about that sort of struck me, but I was young and stupid at the time, so I didn't really push it. But
there's good parts to that. I don't necessarily have a quibble with that point of view.
But I guess it must be interesting, like, but I guess when you act as both architect and developer and builder on some of your projects, I guess you're not having any internal fighting. You're both all on the same side, right?
Oh, no.
No. I have a feeling there's some... But that's good. That can be very productive.
Yeah.
Totally. It's inspiring
after
a day or two.
I like that.
But it always ends in a handshake.
That's
that's what's important. That
is what's
it's a productive conflict.
And I got to say to you both, Irwin and Esperanza, I'm a podcast listener. I listen to a lot of them. And when I first came across yours, I was like, this is not locally produced. This is a big outfit. And I was really happy to see it and listen to it. You guys do a really pro job. Honestly.
Thank you.
It's great to hear you guys.
Esperanza, we should let Nilay and Peter in on our little secret. When we stop having fun, we're going to stop doing it. Right now, we're still having fun, and I think we love this place, and you love this place, and Peter and that's what really keeps everything rooted here. We respect the work that you do, and we respect what architects do in general. And look, to close this out, it's not an easy gig managing sensibilities with client expectations, and wow, it's challenging. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Wow. Definitely is. But we would also stop if it wasn't enjoyable.
Right. Yeah. Hey, Esperanza, they're like us. They're having fun too.
That's why this is the Mutual Admiration Club.
Exactly.
Well, if we stop having fun, we won't be doing this.
We're all four of us are in agreement. All right. So Peter, Nilay, thank you so much for being here. We had a great time. Esperanza, as always.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Irwin.
We're still having fun.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.